But where, you know, where a lot of DJs are like, I don't take requests, which I find quite rude, because it kind of like you're assuming the position of, I know everything about music and I'm doing my thing. And I think if you take you're there on stage playing records, you might be playing in front of 400 people, all of who will know records which you've never heard of. So I think, you know, it's really good. Obviously, some people are going to come up and ask you for something which is not appropriate. Fine, so I'm not going to play that. I'm sorry, you know. I hope you enjoy the music. But then other people are going to come up, oh, you know, you played that Frank Zappa tune. You know, have you got that Captain Beefheart tune? Oh, no, I have, but I've never played it in a club. But thanks for asking me. That's kind of given me the confidence, or, you know. So it's weird because sometimes when I stray into areas of music that I'm not as kind of deep in as, say, hip hop or house or jazz or soul, maybe bits of psychedelic rock or that kind of thing, which I find connections to via artists like Frank Zappa, who might be kind of, you know, a bit jazzy, a bit rocky, or kind of through their musical associations and that kind of thing. You start playing a bit of that, and suddenly regulars who've been, you know, dancing to the other stuff suddenly reveal their expertise in that area and go, oh wow, you played that. Next month, could you play that? And I'm like, no, I don't own that record, but I'm going to make sure I own it by next month, because you've been coming every month for the last 4 years, and I trust your musical judgment, you know what I mean? DJing is a two-way thing. Obviously, you have to pay attention to how people are reacting to your music, but sometimes I'll have a record queued up, someone will come up and ask me for something else in my box, but because they've been dancing, they're almost more in tune with what I'm playing than I am. You know, and they say, oh, have you got this record? I really want to hear it. I'm like, yes, that's in fact a better choice than the one that I had there. And I know that your energy from hearing that and going crazy to it will be very infectious for the rest of the crowd as well. So it's you know, it's more than just watching the crowd, it's listening as well, I think. Hello, this is Mr. Scruff, DJ, Ninja Tune artist and Manchester resident, and you're watching Crate Diggers. Yeah, there must be some soundtracks in here. This is amazing. Shelly Manne, you know, amazing drummer, and a really sort of playful soundtrack to a TV show. I don't think I've ever seen the TV show, but just great, you know, really quite childish and playful, in the same way that some of the Roland Kirk stuff was as well. It's, you know, very musically accomplished, but just great fun as well. You know, this is a favourite album of mine. You know, all sorts, Beverly Hillbillies. Yeah, another sort of probably go quite well next to the Shelly Manne, actually. It's odd because I never really watched films, but I've got loads of soundtracks, so people are telling me about all these obscure films, and oh, great film, isn't it? And like, yeah, the music's great, but I've never seen it. You know, I've seen Top Gun and Star Wars, and that's about it. I think the thing that got me into being obsessive about music and wanting to, I suppose, acquire new sounds and listen to new things was a combination of my parents. My dad was really into blues and he had a bit of ska. My mum was really into sort of 60s soul music and that kind of thing. So they didn't have a massive collection, but there was always, you know, evidence of music around the house. And I think that, and then listening to John Peel in the late 70s as a kid, late at night, and I don't remember being particularly obsessive about music at the time, but I remember listening to his programme a lot. And I think maybe because it was his shambolic presentation and the variety of music. Because when you're a kid, you'll listen to nursery rhyme and punk and, you know, jazz and anything. It's just all music. You've not, I suppose, developed your critical faculties to a point where you're like, I like this and I don't like that, or I'm supposed to like this and my friends, you know, say I shouldn't like that kind of thing. So when you're a kid, you listen to pop music and everything. You know, it's I suppose you're like a sponge, just soaking it all up. Start here, hip hop 12s, UK stuff, imports, alphabetical. They're all BPM'd up, or most of them. So I think when you're DJing, it's just a lot easier to freestyle, because I never really plan anything when I'm DJing. I just put some records in a box, put them all in order of tempo, make the whole night go kind of smoothly and cohesively. Some electro here, which is a lot of the stuff I really grew up on. I mean, this is all soundtracks, children's records, compilations, all 12s, sort of downbeat, left field, Ninja Tune type stuff, Mo-Wax, soul, disco, boogie 12s. We're now downstairs in the proper record room, that's all soul stuff, all reggae here, drum and bass and sort of bass music, as I suppose it's now called, sort of, yeah, bottom heavy stuff of all persuasions. Over here, kind of left fieldy downbeat albums, hip hop albums, blues, Bollywood stuff, African, tropical, Latin stuff, Cuban, Brazilian, Puerto Rican, Venezuelan, Colombian, Argentinian, that kind of thing. House albums, load of random stuff, a few 45s there. This whole wall's mostly house 12s and then jazz section in the corner. A load of stuff that I need to tidy up. I'm glad you guys came round actually, because I couldn't even get in this room yesterday. I spent a good 10 hours putting stuff back in order. The first record I bought was by Shakin' Stevens, who was a kind of like an unfortunate 50s throwback. Lots of kind of knee knocking and kind of, you know, Elvis look-alike, quiff, cover versions of R&B classics, and the single that I bought of his was Green Door. Which is a great old R&B tune, but his version wasn't great, but I was 8 at the time. That was the first single, and then the first album I bought, or the first album that my mum bought for me, was a Madness compilation album called Complete Madness. And when she came back from visiting relatives in Manchester with this double album of my favourite band, I was like, wow, you know, I'd never had an album before. I felt really grown up, and it had about, you know, 25 tracks on it, so that was, out of all the presents I've ever received in my life, I think that's one of the best, simply because of how unexpected it was. That Complete Madness thing kind of opened another door in my musical quest, because I realised that, you know, Madness were my favourite band and Two Tone was very big at the time. It had just hit the charts, which I think, you know, as a young kid was how my awareness of it began. But my dad also had a couple of Prince Buster singles, including One Step Beyond and Madness. And I was going through my dad's records, and even then, by the time you're 8 or 9, you kind of think that you're cool and your parents aren't, and realising that my dad had stuff from, you know, 15 years previous by a guy called, you know, Prince Buster, who's done a tune called Madness that my favourite band named themselves after, and then my favourite Madness tune, One Step Beyond, was also, you know, the original was by, you know, a chap who my dad had on vinyl. So that kind of really sort of blew open my expectations of what music could be, and I think that's what really started me on a bit of a quest, because I think before then I thought I knew quite a lot about music, and then I realised, okay, I thought I was cool, my dad wasn't, and my dad's way cooler than me because he's got the same music that inspired my favourite band. And I think that's when it all, you know, that's when, you know, every penny that I was earning from paper rounds and pocket money just went on vinyl from then on. This one, a very important record to me. This is a record that my dad had, and it was the one blues record that he had in his collection, which I think it blew me away the most, because a jam session recorded, and I think these guys met for the first time at this gig, and they did a gig together in the evening, and then basically got the whiskey and went back to, you know, a shack or something like that, you know, a back room of a bar, and just recorded this album. There's only 7 tracks on it, or 6 tracks on it, sorry. And a lot of them are like 5, 6, 7 minutes long, which is really unusual for a blues album. You're used to snappy kind of 2, 3 minute long tunes. You could feel like you're almost there. It's amazing, you know, just the character. But yeah, this is one that my dad had and wouldn't give to me, and then I managed to find a copy a few years later for 10 quid. But yeah, for, you know, for kind of personal reasons and musical reasons, one of my favourite albums. Another incredible album, Alice Clark, the only album she made. I think she did a couple of other singles as well. 10 tracks on this, everyone's absolutely mind-blowing, you know, and I think as soul albums go, that's pretty much as good as it gets with regards to a kind of perfect document. And I suppose the extra mystery of where on earth is she now? No one seems to know anything about her. She did this one album, a couple of singles, and, you know, disappeared. An amazing album, sort of 90s street soul, with kind of real hip-hop production, I suppose. heavy drums, piano, bass, very rough production. You know, Sarah Winton has got an amazing sort of almost like glacial voice, really, get really, really high notes. Great songs, great compositions, really rough, heavy beats as well. You know, quite sparse production, but a very, very special album, and still seems to be really, really overlooked in sort of soul circles. I mean, as a kind of document of 90s street soul as well. I think it was just hearing a friend of mine, I think 11, I remember, I went round to my friend's house after school, and he borrowed some of his uncle's electro records. His uncle was quite a serious collector. So, you know, aside from going back and listening to, you know, the latest Wham releases or, you know, pop music, he'd dig out this stuff that his uncle had lent him, and it's like, what's this? Why are there no gaps? You know, the whole thing about mixing I'd never encountered before, so I just thought, you know, they'd maybe lost the gaps to fit more on one side of an album. I didn't think, oh, this is the DJ blending something together in a very sophisticated way. And then soon after, I started buying those electro compilations, trying to hunt out the 12 inches that were featured on those, and then sort of trying those mixes for myself. And that was the thing that really started it off. And then in the 80s, it was kind of the era of the mega mix, that kind of New York style, Shep Pettibone, Latin Rascals, you know, loads of very influential New York radio shows were making their way over here, and then a lot of UK DJs were copying that format as well. You had people like Greg Wilson and Chad Jackson and a lot of DJs like that, doing quite short, snappy 15, 20, 30-minute mixes of new releases on the radio, which are all edited really well and were very slick kind of studio mixes. This is the to be put back on the shelf in order pile. Basically, when I'm playing out, the stuff stays in boxes, kind of outgrows the boxes, takes over the floor. And it's really nice when I'm preparing for a gig to be able to go through stuff which I've already taken the time to pull off the shelves. And if I've not played it, I'm not going to put it back. But then it gets to a point where you can't crouch down and look through some records. You kind of like that, where it's a little bit uncomfortable, and that's time to tidy up again. This is a great old tune, Jungle Kitten by Manfredo Fest. Kind of a bit of a UK jazz dance classic, very unusual, kind of a fast Brazilian style disco. That's a lovely one. Microwave Boogie by Skip Jackson. Just a very odd, very percussive, quite oddly arranged early 80s sort of disco boogie thing. Singing about microwaves, obviously something very futuristic at the time, but initially it seems like quite an ordinary record, and then you play it and by the end of it, it sounds like something completely different, and this is both sides of it. Quite a mysterious dubby feel to it, and I like records which pull you in and spit you out at the other end with a, you know, in a completely different mood. You know, it's very tactically as a DJ, it's very useful because you can go from A to D rather than A to B. How that started off like a normal disco record, and now it sounds very strange. There's probably a few records in terms of spending a lot of money on things. I probably spent sort of £500, £600, £700 on a single record on a few occasions. This one here, Family Tree, which is a real disco classic, and there's two amazing tunes on it. There's Family Tree. This is a thing from LA from about '75, I think. Family Tree, which I believe Sharon Brown, who's much better known for her later disco stuff with Prelude, sang on this. And then there's this tune by Sky on the B-side, which is the most glorious, soulful jam. You can just tell they're having such a great party in the studio. You know, that one I paid £500 for, but I think because I'm not going that extra mile and going to all these warehouses in America and, you know, and getting myself a really bad back, the only way you're going to get hold of records like this is by paying people who've gone out and done that. To me, if it's a good record, I don't mind paying a lot of money for it, but if it's been reissued, I'll buy the reissue, you know what I mean? This owning the originals thing isn't particularly important to me, but if the original is the best, cleanest, loudest pressing of it, then I'll buy the original because the sound quality is very important. But you know, on many occasions in the past, I've paid you know, far too much for a record, and it's been reissued a month later by Jazzman or someone like that, but the reissue is because it's from the original master tapes and it's brand new virgin vinyl and it's been properly researched and, you know, lovingly curated, it sounds better, so I'll get rid of the original. That whole trophy thing isn't that important to me. It's the music and having it sound really good. Yeah, a lot of the big collections I bought were just good things to bulk out your collection or things that you should own, you know, especially in the early days when you're sort of 15 or 16, and it's good to have all the, you know, a load of Chic and James Brown and, you know, kind of Zap and all that kind of thing. If you're getting these original 12 inches for 50p each, that's the stuff, you know, before you start worrying about the rare stuff. You know, I think it's very important to have that foundation, and I think also you should have all the cheap stuff before you start spending £50 or £100 on records. I think getting into music just for rarity, to me seems a bit odd, because that's slightly too much in the bias of, I don't know, one-upmanship and all that kind of thing, which is a very important part of record collection in terms of discovering music which people wouldn't otherwise hear. But for me, it's also, you know, I like Chic as much as I like Sun Ra and that kind of thing. So it's very important to have all, you know, have all the Motown records first before you start going, there's £2,000 for, you know, a super rare Northern Soul thing. This a brand new thing actually. It's not just about old records. You know, there's still vinyl being released now. This is a guy, Paddy Steer, who was originally in Yago, and then was part of a band signed to Ninja Tune called Home Life. And this is an album he released on his own Mad Waltz Records about 6 months ago. Crazy. It's like Tom Z, Hermeto Pasquale, sort of a one-man shambolic robot band. He sounds like he's really having fun. He builds a lot of his own equipment. He's got this thing called the Out of Control Centre that you can see on the back of the album. You'll see an album with a cover like that and you'll just buy it. You know it's good. And this is my friend Jip, who's a jazz DJ from Leeds. He was playing a gig in Manchester probably about 10 or 12 years ago now. And this massive drum break came out of the speakers, and I thought it sounded like kind of like a Masters at Work record or something like that. And then suddenly all these horns came in, and then this crazy guitar solo, all this percussion, and they just showed me that. And, you know, told me the name of the guy who found it for him. I rang him up and, you know, got a copy the next week. But yeah, absolutely crazy old Czechoslovakian stuff. And I've since bought, you know, another 4 or 5 of his albums. Amazing, kind of very soulful, rough, kind of big band sound, very deep, very enjoyable on, you know, on a lot of, you know, either when it's quite an energetic tune or quite, you know, kind of mellow stuff. Sugar Hill Gang. Very pleased to find a crazy little mellow soul track, Passion Play, on this album. It's not a rare thing, but it's got Rapper's Delight on, which you can kind of give or take. It has its place in history, but Passion Play, amazing tune, really kind of wriggly bass line, almost like whispered sung vocals. It's great. I only wish they'd done more of that kind of stuff, really. Peddlers album. I mean, the Peddlers are kind of, you know, very soulful in their own way, that kind of sort of slightly rocky, jazzy, late 60s, a bit folky, tough drums, loads of Hammond organ, Rhodes, that kind of thing. But this album they did with the London Philharmonic Orchestra is something else. You've got a full, you know, the full kind of weight and drama of the orchestra, and then fronted by the Peddlers. And the Rhodes is going through like a ring modulator, so it's all going fat drums, heavy bass lines with an orchestra. Yeah, as a listen all the way through, you know, this is an incredible album. I think a few years ago when the digital thing came along, Serato and Tractor and all that kind of thing, it just didn't appeal to me really, in terms of it seemed like a massive effort to digitise something which was already to me perfect, and take the time and the trouble to put it onto your computer and then play that out and keep the records at home. That seemed like a really good way to kind of neglect your collection, I think. And also, I really like the way vinyl sounds, and I have quite a hi-fi setup with my with my DJ kit. So it's, you know, custom made preamps, really nice tone arms, good hi-fi styli. So the signal chain between, you know, the surface, the grooves and the vinyl and the sound system is very clean and as short as possible. I like, you know, my taxi's here in 10 minutes, I'm going to a gig, I want that one and that one and that one, put them in the box and then play them. This is already, you know, this is a format which is, to me, as good as it gets, as I'm concerned. Each record has a little story to it, an association with me, that a list on a screen wouldn't do. So I like the way I DJ I like the way vinyl makes me play. It's a fixed format. If you want to extend something, you have to work 2 copies. It's quite hard work. And also a lot of the records that I play, although I mix, I'm quite technical, they're great as they are. They don't need much messing with. So I think if you're playing off a computer, you can loop stuff, you can rifle through records, 30 seconds of this, 30 seconds of that. And to me, I like to play all night and play the whole tune and maybe catch the end and have a quick blend or do a bit of mixing and, you know, some little segments that are quite intense. But generally, I like the way the vinyl, especially with a hi-fi setup where you have to be quite delicate, you know, you can't scratch or anything, and even sometimes before you let the record go, it'll be skipping in the groove, so you've got to be really, really gentle about it. I like the way that kind of makes you take a back seat and showcase this music which you've spent all your life collecting. I find that when you're surrounded by records, I always get this when I'm in a record shop. I'll go to the pub and with another DJ and I'll talk about records for 4 hours straight. I'll walk in a record shop and suddenly your mind goes absolutely blank.